for those of you that are joining, you will receive a recorded link that you can reference back. Or if you miss anything and have to tune out early, we will share the recording. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the NYU Stern Executive MBA Program Q&A with a member of our faculty, and tonight we have Professor Bruce Buchanan joining us. So thank you for joining us. Like I said, one housekeeping item, that the session is being recorded. Just to briefly introduce myself, my name is Heather McDaniel. I've worked with the Executive MBA admissions team for a little over 5 years. My background is in marketing and advertising, so I work with the team in that capacity, but I also sit on the admissions committee. I run a number of our events. I conduct applicant interviews, and the best part of my job is I get to meet really interesting individuals and get to be a part of candidates' journey to higher education. And many of our candidates' cases, additional higher education. So it's great to be able to speak with all of you. And those of you who I have not already met, I hope that our paths do cross on the journey, your journey to higher education. So we're thrilled to have Professor Buchanan with us and excited for him to share some insights into the executive MBA learning experience here in just a few moments. And I will allow Bruce to introduce himself when we kick it over to him. But just to say, in the audience, we do have people joining us at various stages of their MBA exploration. So from prospective candidates that have just decided they want to pursue an MBA, all the way to admitted and enrolled students that will be joining us at NYU Stern in some of the upcoming terms. So want to welcome everyone and happy to have you joining us today. Following the moderated Q&A, I will open it up to the audience for questions. So feel free to use the Q&A feature throughout the session to pose any questions that you'd like me to ask. I will try to get to as many questions as possible in the time that we have. And if you have any questions specific to your candidacy or an application, I would encourage you to reach out to our team specifically, so the admissions team specifically, with those questions, and we're happy to answer those. But tonight, I want to leave questions specifically for Bruce, who we have with us, to learn more about the learning experience and what it's like to be a student and what the teaching executive MBA students is like. So without further ado, I would love to have Professor Buchanan introduce themselves. And again, want to welcome you. Thank you so much for joining us. It's wonderful and a great experience for people to be able to hear from our faculty. So thank you so much. To kick it off, would you please introduce yourself and say what it is that you teach here at NYU Stern?
Sure, Heather, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening to talk to folks about the program. And it's a program that I have spent a lot of time working in. I've taught in the Executive MBA program every year since 1997, believe it or not, and enjoyed it immensely. It's a very intriguing program from the teaching side, from the professorial side, and we'll get to some of that in a moment. But by way of background, I'm an engineer by training. I was EE initially. I worked in software development in the defense industry for a few years. I wound up going back to get an MBA and instead got a PhD and wound up as a faculty member as opposed to an executive. You never know what's going to happen in this world. And I've been at NYU for, well, a very long time. And I came on as a marketing professor, so I still teach marketing courses. And I also have taught courses in statistics, multivariate statistics, and data analysis. I'm a sort of a statistician by training at the graduate level. And for the last 25 years or so, actually 30 years, I've been involved with the business ethics program here at the school, which goes by the name of the Business and Society program. My involvement with the Exec MBA is in that context. I teach a course called Professional Responsibility. It's one of the first courses that you will take when you join us. Some of the classes are offered during the residency, that 1 week residency at the beginning. And so I get to meet everyone right when they show up. It's a great experience for me, and I hope for them. But the teaching in the program is very special, and that's who I am. And I've been here for a long time. So,
Yes, thank you for that. And
okay.
you really do get the unique opportunity to get to meet students right when they're joining the program. So we'll get more to that because I'd love to learn a little bit more about that experience. But we'll get to that in just a few moments. So you've been at Stern for a number of years, and you've taught within the executive program for a number of years. So in your opinion, what do you think makes Stern and the executive MBA program unique?
Well, it has a couple of properties I think are very, very strong. Uh, number one, I've always been impressed, and this is not because Heather's here, with the quality of the staff behind the program. There's a huge dedication to making it a good experience for each and every student. And that ethos has been in the program for decades, since the beginning. I knew the first director of the program, Norman Berman, and that was very important to him. And that really has persisted throughout the decades. People care for the students when they get here, and I think the students feel cared for. Secondly, the program is kind of a boutique program. You're going to come in with a group of probably 45 to 55 students, and you're going to take your first year courses with them, a lot of it in block fashion, and then your electives will be with them and probably a little bit from the class ahead or behind you in the second year. So there's a real sense of cohort and a real sense of community. In some sense, the small size of the program gives it a kind of social coherence that you're not going to get in a really big program. And here at Stern, we have a number of programs, as you know, MBA programs, undergraduate and exec. And this one is one of the smaller programs, and it really has that high touch, caring community feel to it. And that's something I think makes it special. Now, as regards to students, and this, I think, for me, the real joy of teaching, one of the real joys of teaching this program is the students. Because if you're a teacher, which is what I am, there's two questions. What do you get to teach, and who do you get to teach? So in this program, I get to teach business ethics, which is how do we figure out right versus wrong in a business context? This is not statistics. This is not a subject where I know the answer and you don't. It's a subject where we all sort of explore possible answers together. So given it's that kind of course, what's really important is who's in the room with you. And the Exec MBA class has an extraordinary diversity of people in every class. In a group of, let's say, 45 to 50 people, there will be a few MDs, a few doctors, some people from not-for-profits. There'll be a number of people who are former officers in the armed services. There'll be people who are coming in from foreign countries every other week to be with us in the class session. There'll be people from New York, and there'll be people from the government. And all these people bring their own perspectives and their own insights to the questions that we're looking at. And because we're looking at questions of an ethical nature, what ought we to do here? Everyone has something to contribute. And in our classroom, we try to get the voices into the air to learn from the wisdom in the room, so to speak. And in the Exec MBA program, there's just such a diversity of perspectives and a lot of accumulated wisdom and experience. And that makes the discussions, I think, in the class very worthwhile, very, very special to teach, I must say.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Yeah, that speaks a lot to what really makes the program unique. And as from an admissions perspective, we really do look to bring in people from all different backgrounds and functions and years of work experience. And so it's great to hear that that really comes through in the classroom and really contributes to the learning experience as well. So, how would you summarize Stern's approach to teaching?
That's a good question. First of all, I have to say, every professor brings to the classroom their own particular approach to doing things. It's a craft that you sort of work on at the individual level. But I think there is a kind of school culture that comes through each and every professor. And I think Stern's approach to teaching is, I find, refreshingly no nonsense. And we try to keep it, how should I say? I'm looking for the right word, which is a polite company word. No BS, if you will. No, we don't do a lot of pretension. We don't do you know grandiosity. We try to get at the issues, talk about things honestly, particularly in a course like this, and to bring to the classroom a competent, professional, unfiltered point of view, and bring that to the students. And we realize also, I mean, the way I put it is, speaking as a professor and as a teacher at NYU, I've never felt claustrophobia. I've never felt the brand of the institution weighing down upon me. I felt that in the classroom, each one of us has the freedom to pursue the truth as we see it. And when I teach statistics, I do it a certain way, not always like other people do, but I do it my way. And I think that's what you get at NYU. You get people's best attempt to get the ideas over to you, given who they are.
Yeah, that's great. And, really getting to cater the teaching to your style as well, but being what the students need and making sure the students learn the material. Um,
I think in
so
the exec program, it's very, because it's not a large program, it's very discursive. And there's a fair amount of, I wouldn't say one-on-one, but even in my course, which is not a very long course, I know every student before that course is over.
yeah,
In fact, I know every student before the course begins because you folks put together a class profile for us. So what I like about that is I walk into a classroom and I know who's the former fighter pilot and who has run the cardiac ward at this hospital and who has done this. And when we want to have a conversation, I can bring those people into the conversation at the right time. And that sort of openness and drawing upon everyone, I think, is something that I like about NYU.
yeah, that's wonderful. So our schedules, so for New York, we have an every other week, Friday, Saturday schedule. And then in DC, it's a once a month, Friday, Saturday, Sunday schedule.
Right.
What are your thoughts on the classroom schedule and how that works for the learning experience?
Well, that's a very good question. Now, I teach in all of the MBA programs, the full-time MBA program, the Langone program, which tends to meet once a week or in weekend intensives, and then the exec programs. I teach in both DC and in New York City. And I find that the every other weekend or the 3-day weekends in DC works very well because the students are very busy people. They have a lot of responsibility and a lot going on. Once every other week, they attempt to put their life on over there on hold and focus on the classroom experience for 2 straight days. And I feel we have a better chance of breaking through and getting people's full share of mind in a weekend experience. The other thing it does is it encourages socialization among the students. Students often work in study groups, especially in first year, I think. And so very often they will meet with a study group Thursday night, go to classes Friday, meet Friday evening, go to classes Saturday. So it becomes an immersive sort of 2.5-day experience every other week. And I think that really helps the student to concentrate on the material. And I think it creates a culture, it creates a community because people spend time with each other. So I actually think it works quite well. I mean, I've taught these kind of courses one night a week in the Langone program, and that works fine, but you don't get that same intensity and that same community doing it that way.
Yeah, that's great. And, it's the program it's intentionally designed with these busy working professionals in mind. So, um, focused on learning the material, doing it Friday, Saturday, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday in DC. So it is intentionally designed, and we hear from students it is manageable. Because I know a big concern is the commitment and the time and juggling all of the competing priorities. So it's great to hear you think that that still really works well, and you get that engagement in the classroom very much so.
Well, I think we do. And
Yeah,
I think the other thing, the student who joins the program, their place of employment, if they're working for someone else, and some of them are entrepreneurs themselves, is committing every other week to giving them Friday to focus on this. And so it's what you tend to learn is that the student who goes through the program, they've got people who are working with them on their side to make it all come together, their employer and also very often their family,
yeah,
because they're at a stage of life where there are others involved. And one of my favorite experiences, and I almost never miss them, is an exec MBA graduation. They're just joyous events. Everyone brings their family, spouses, parents, kids, whatnot. And you realize that each person who gets through the program has, been supported by people who love them and care for them on the way
yeah.
through.
It's great to see everyone that's involved in the process.
Absolutely.
So we've touched on this lightly. You certainly talked on, the diversity of the program, but what else in your um, do you think makes an executive MBA student? What's so distinctive about an executive MBA student?
Well, I think you have to look at the decision the student goes through to get an MBA at that point in their career. I mean, the students in the classroom already, many or most of them, have substantial authority in their place of work in their organizations, and they're kind of on a fast track. That's why they're here, and they've received an awful lot of positive feedback, and some of them are out, 10, 15, 20 years. Why would a person at that stage come back and do an MBA? And everyone's got their own reasons, but what they're trying to do more often than not is to deepen their understanding of the job they already have and to prepare them for the next level, whatever that might be. And a lot of people we have in the program are a couple of jumps away from the C level. And they feel like they're, I think, going to need that to really be able to do that job well. And I think the focus in the program is on sort of the top of the firm and general
Hmm.
management and thinking strategically. And I think the whole firm's sort of tailored that way. And I will sometimes walk into a classroom, I look at the profile before I start teaching and say, oh my goodness, I can't teach this person anything. uh, I won't give the exact thing, but we had an executive vice president of PepsiCo in the program a number of years back. And he's EVP of PepsiCo. And he's in my class. I'm thinking, well, wait a minute now. I should be asking him. But he was a great student, and he was, preparing himself for that next level of responsibility. And so that, I think, is what you see a lot there. We also
Yeah,
get a fair number of people who have been practicing physicians, and they've done that for 15, 20 years, and now they're going to take a major role in their hospital or health institution. And they need to learn the vocabulary of business and have a systematic way of dealing with these very complicated issues. We have people who joined the program after serving in the military for 20 years. We had a fair number of 20-year people. So they're coming in at early 40s, and they're lieutenant colonels or captains, and they bring an awful lot of wisdom and experience with them.
yeah.
So I'm reminded of certain things people have said. I once had a Air Force major. He was still in the Air Force at the time, and we were talking about vendor issues and quality control. And he said, when you fly a fighter jet, you realize you're flying something with 2 million parts in it, and each part was made by a low-cost bidder. And every time you pull back on the stick, you have to think about the fact that every part was submitted by a low-cost bidder. And that's an insight I could never provide myself. And the student did.
That's really interesting and funny now for us all to think about. So you've touched on some already, and it sounds like you have a lot to pull from. But do you have some other very memorable in classroom experience that you have had with executive MBA students?
Oh, yes. I mean, if you're teaching business ethics and professional responsibility, people bring some of who they are to the course. And I remember one from way back, and this is someone who I've kept up with all these years. Um, but his name is Kevin Jennings. He's a public figure. He went on to be Deputy Undersecretary of the Department of Education. But when he was in the Executive MBA program, he was one of the foremost gay activists in the country. This was the very late 90s. And he'd founded a group called GLSEN, the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Educators Network, which is now in thousands of high schools around the country. And he spoke to us about some of the issues, and this is now 25 years ago, that he was dealing with. And was a true voice of authority and really a leader, sitting in the third row. So you do get that. I've had physicians talk about managing end-of-life issues with patients and families and cost structures. And, they have lived that experience. I never will. So having someone like that in the room who can talk about these things at that level of institutional and emotional truth as professionals is really very special. And I certainly get a lot about it. I think the students who are not in the field appreciate some of the challenges that these folks are facing. So, yes, I think that's, there's a lot of those.
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredible moments, and I'm sure really stick with you. So you mentioned, you teach one of the first classes in the program,
Yes.
but you're also, teaching classes further into an executive MBA student's journey. What what is something that you see? What's something that you see changes about the class or the students from that very beginning class, you know, to when you get them next in a elective course?
Well, that's
What
a
are the
great
changes
question.
that you see?
That's a great question. I see them very often on their first day in the program, and I
Mhm.
get 2 or 3 sessions in that first week of residency. And for the DC students, I'm there for their entire residency. And the energy in the room, the enthusiasm in the room, and the sense of possibility in the room is almost overwhelming. I mean, everyone is very excited to be there, including me. And everyone is meeting new people and learning new things very quickly. And the residency is a really wonderful, immersive, and tailored experience that encourages everyone to open up and get to know each other and to bring their full self to the program. And we've over the years held them in different places, so I'm not going to mention any by name. But I've always been very pleased or felt very fortunate that I get to teach in that context. I also teach a second year elective. I've done that the last 4 or 5 years, a course called Corporations in Society. When you enroll, please take my elective. I enjoy teaching that one too. And that's a second year course, often taught in their last term in the program. And so by that point, they're much more seasoned, and they've done international study trips, and they've had a year and a half of weaving the ideas that we've taught them into their own professional lives. So, those students as students, are a lot more confident in the classroom in sharing their ideas and pushing back against mine. And that's a good thing. It's a discussion. And, but what I also sense by that second year is a lot of them are very close friends. And they've been through this experience together. It's an intense experience. Some of them, they're usually in study groups, and those study groups are very tight. And those study groups will persist sometimes for decades after they graduate because they all have got to know each other. And so by second year, you're really tapping into that. And they know the school and they know the ins and outs. So it's a different teaching experience, but it's very positive. And what's also there by the end of the second term, of the second year, is the sense that they've done it, they've made it, and
Mhm.
they're going on to the next step. And it's exciting to be part of that as well.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Um, how would you say, from a learning and teaching perspective, that success is defined?
I think that really it depends upon the course. And the Exec MBA program, not to get mechanical here, has a grading scale which is tailored to the program. And the basic grade that someone gets in an individual course is a pass. And 2/3 to 70% of the students, even more sometimes, will get a pass, which means you've absorbed the ideas, you've done the work well, and we're moving on to the next step. That, and then there is a high pass for those who clear the bar considerably. And then for a few students who bring a special something to the course, there's a grade called pass distinction. Now, in a course like professional responsibility, the person who would get a pass distinction is probably bringing some particular experience to the class that resonates with the ideas, especially. In a statistics class, a pass distinction might go to someone who's either a math major undergrad or an engineer who does that kind of stuff routinely. But there's no pressure to get a pass distinction. That's just a demarcation, if you will, sort of an honorific. And I think that the nature of the grading scale fosters a collaborative environment. There is no curve. If you start the program, the assumption is you're going to finish the program because you're going to do the work and you're going to learn it, and we're going to help you learn it, and your classmates will help you learn it, and you'll be supported where you need it to be supported. And so I think that creates this sort of sense of we're all trying to learn together and we're not competing against each other. And that's, I think, a important quality of that program.
Yeah, that's something we always highlight. At the end of the day, our students, most, you know, employed or entrepreneurial, you're not competing for jobs at the end of the day. So it really does allow you to bring everything to the table, and have those in classroom discussions, and work in tandem with the professors, with your classmates. So it's something we highlight as well. So a question that comes up quite often, an MBA has, and Stern itself has can come with a connotation of quantitative rigor, and
Right.
um, so something that we often hear is, I can't do the quantitative coursework. I'm not ready for that. That's not my background. So how do you manage this? Like, we do have people that are coming into the program, and I know you've taught statistics. How do you work with students coming into the program with limited quantitative experience beforehand, and how do they succeed in those kind of courses?
Well, I think if we take a course like data analytics or statistics or microeconomics, these can be taught very technically and with a lot of mathematics. They can also be taught more conceptually. And, I think the people in the faculty program realize that our students are at a stage of their careers where they need to understand what's important about statistics and understand to some degree how to use statistical output and work from people who work for them, but they're not going to be running the regressions themselves. So we're not teaching people to prove theorems, and we're not teaching people, separating hyperplanes in microeconomics. We're trying to get at the ideas of substance and the ideas that matter. And to allow students from various backgrounds to absorb and internalize those ideas and be able to use them. But we have people coming into the program who have majored in art history, people who are literature majors, people who are poli-sci, people who have done all sorts of different things, and people who are artists. And we've had concert pianists have been students of mine, and these are not people who have taken micro. These are not people who have taken statistics. So we know that, and our success is helping those people to learn what they need to know and carry on, get through that program. So
And
will it be challenging? Yes, for some people, quite challenging. And for others, those particular courses might be pretty easy. But they'll be more challenged in the management courses and the negotiation courses and the professional responsibility course.
And what kind of support is available for students? How do you support students outside of the classroom if they need help? And what's your engagement with students outside of the classroom?
These days, I rely upon two basic approaches. One, when students are in residence, I'm here before class, I'm here after class. And so I try to be around. I'm available through email, and that sometimes works when people are busy or traveling. And I've also set up Zooms. I do meet in my office here occasionally with a student, but they're busy, and when they're in town for the classes, they're often busy with the classes. But we set up phone conversations and Zooms as needed. With professional responsibility, because it's not a very technical course, the discussions with students tend to be sometimes about their jobs and issues they're encountering in professional life, and they will want to talk about them. And my approach there is, well, okay, this is professorial advice and not professional advice. There's a difference. I'm your teacher. I'm not, an authority. Your authority within your firm. You're the executive. I'm not. But let's talk it over, and I'll listen, and we'll exchange ideas. But I find that I learn a lot from these things and from that kind of engagement. So, there is a real dialogue there between faculty and students. And you're always surprised by who winds up in the classroom and what they do and don't know. I remember one time being at a residency, and the first morning, I'm teaching at 9 o'clock, so I get up very early, so I'm awake. And I go down to breakfast first thing, and there at 7 o'clock, I walk in. One of the first people there's a fellow sitting there. And I sit down next to him, and I said, well, I'm Bruce, and what do you do? And he said, I'm the mayor of Oklahoma City. And he was. And he was in the classroom. Mick Cornett, he was mayor for 18 years out there. Did very, very well in that role. But he brought a particular perspective to some of the issues we had around business and government and economic development. And he brought to it also a very keen politician sensibility that most of us don't have. So, it kind of works all those ways.
Yeah, very interesting for sure. And so how would you recommend a student build a good relationship with their professors throughout the program?
I think, number one, initiate communication. Talk to them. No professor has that many exec MBA students at any one time. When I'm teaching undergraduates in the middle of the term, I could have, 100 or more undergraduate students. But when I'm teaching the exec MBAs, as I say, I know them all. I know them before the course begins. And if someone contacts me, I know who's contacting me and what kind of things they're dealing with. And so, you're going to teach me something too, and I'll try to teach you something. So if you want that kind of experience, I think it's available. I think, but you make it happen, and some exec MBA students have tremendous demands on their time, and they're not trying to do that, but some are. And just a couple of examples. Kevin Jennings, who I mentioned before, was in the class of '99, okay, way back. And he was literally an unforgettable person. And he and I kept in touch over the years. And he went on to be Deputy Undersecretary of Education. He went on to run the Arcus Foundation. He went on to run the Tenement Museum. And now he's running Lambda Legal. And finally, I called up and said, would you like to teach for us, Kevin? And he actually came back and taught as an adjunct for a couple of years in our undergraduate professional responsibility program. And he has come back on numerous occasions to talk to the exec MBAs in the course. A graduate a few years ago, Chana Rosenthal, who was a entrepreneur in fashion, is now working with the Center for Business and Human Rights as an associate here doing research. So I like to think that once you're in the NYU community, you're here forever. I mean, there's always a way to stay involved and to stay connected. And the exec MBA program, because it is this sort of intense and supportive community, I think lends itself to that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great to hear. So some of the nitty gritty details of what's the coursework like? Is everything case study? Is it group projects, assignments? And it could probably vary by course, I'm sure.
It will vary by course. I think a lot of faculty try to use the group format where they can. I think students are put into study groups, so you expect some synergy that way, and students learn from each other that way. I try to, in the era of Chat GPT, but I was doing this long before Chat GPT, I think one of the things that an executive has to do is develop their own voice. When they speak or write, they have to have a sense of themselves coming through. So in my class, there's an awful lot of individual writing. Students keep a journal for each class session, a reflection on the session, and they do a final paper. So for a reasonably short course, they're probably going to write 20 pages total. Now, in a finance course, there's going to be problem sets and case studies to do. In a course like statistics or probably firms and markets, which is our micro, there's probably in-class tests as well for basic concepts. So the style of the pedagogy and the style of the assignments is going to be tailored to the subject matter itself. But I think what we all recognize is these are executives. And these people, if you're teaching someone statistics as an undergraduate, you expect them to go out and trade on their technical capabilities as a statistician. The undergraduate program at Stern turns out some of the technically best trained people in the economy were known for that. But that's undergraduate. At the exec level, you want people to appreciate what's going on in these techniques, be able to use them with some judgment and to think about them constructively. But we're not training technicians. We're training executives.
Great. And we've had one specific question come in about, your professional responsibility class. Curious about how you foster, that leadership and management capabilities, within the class. How do you get people involved? Like, how do you get people to speak up?
Well, that's a very good question. And I think the first thing I would say there is people have to feel safe speaking in the room. And they're in a room, in that residency, these are all people they've just met. They're together for a week. There's this fellow in the front of the room who's this, faculty member. And what you want people to understand early on is that their voice counts. And what they can bring to the conversation is important. And one thing I tell students in my class, and it applies to my class, but it applies to the entire program, you're going to learn more from your classmates than you will from any one faculty member. Each one of you has something to teach the others. and we're here to learn from each other. In a course like professional responsibility, I do not come in teaching a party line. I do not tell people what's the right thing to do. I almost never do that. I'll tell you if something's illegal, but that's different. I mean, I have one rule: don't commit felonies. And I'll stand behind that one pretty firmly. And when we get to talk about insider trading, that might come up. But there's so much gray zone in business, and the people in the room are working for companies all around the world under different rules of law and in different cultures. So I'm in no position in the front of the room to say, this is the right answer. And I almost never do.
That's
Which
great.
means I have to be able to get you to talk about what you think is important and how you frame the problem. And that's what we try to do.
That's great. And so, as we mentioned, we have, excuse me, the executive MBA program in New York and in DC.
Right.
So I'm curious to hear from a teaching perspective and from a cohort specific, what do you find unique and kind of different between the two?
Well, that's a very good question. They are different. The New York cohort is going to be a bit more banking, insurance, and finance, real estate. Nowadays, high tech, because there's a lot of high tech in New York City, and then a fair amount of international people coming through. People coming in from, I mean, like Mick Cornett, came in from Oklahoma every other week, and people doing that. We have people coming in from Mexico and things like that. The DC program and business in the district is really quite different than New York City. The federal government is a huge player there, and the kind of companies that cluster around DC tend to be government contractors, Booz Allen Hamilton, defense industry, telecom companies, and that. So you get a fair amount of that. And within the District of Columbia itself, you have a lot of public relations firms, lobbying firms. We almost always have a few people from the government itself in that cohort. I've had people who work on the Hill as chief of staff for Congress people and things like that. People who are in federal agencies, in the Department of Defense, in the FTC, things like that. And they bring their own perspective to these things. So there is a little difference. I mean, the ideas and the principles we talk about are the same in both sections of the course. But if you will, the wisdom and the experience that gets brought to those principles and those discussions is slightly different. And we get, I would say, probably more service people, more officers and former officers in the DC cohort. Last summer, I had a commander from the Coast Guard in the cohort. It was a very interesting point of view. So yes, DC is a little different that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen that in the cohort as recruiting wise as well. But to your point, everyone with really such unique perspectives to bring to the classroom experience and still looking to, I always say at the end of the day, in some way, shape, or form, regardless of what background you're coming from, everything runs as a business. I mean, as you mentioned, many doctors, lawyers, museum curators. So it's definitely been it's unique, the types of students.
And their voices matter. There's one student, I will mention her because she's an alum now, and I bring her back as a guest speaker. Her name is Kate Ferrante, and Kate is class of 17. And when she joined us, she had worked for a labor union, and when she finished, she became a very senior person in the Service Employees International Union here in New York for a number of years. And so to have this labor perspective in the classroom was really interesting. And she brought to it a very distinct point of view. And I actually remember talking to her when she was in the application process one-on-one, because she wasn't sure it was for her, given that she was kind of labor. But she went through the program and she did very well. And she's now working for a startup doing decarbonization programs. So she's taking the education and taking it to another dimension.
Yeah, and that's a great example. I'm curious, you've had so many students and been a part of so many students' journeys, and then they graduate and they become alum and they continue to do really incredible things. How do you stay engaged with students and as they become alumni?
Well, I seem to have an inexhaustible need for guest speakers. So, if someone's done something interesting, I will call them up and or um, you know contact them from some basis. So if I want to learn something or have a question, I will go back to someone who I know knows something about this. Um, and I just, because you get to know the students a bit while they're here, and sometimes they come back to me for professional just conversations. I think advice is too grand a word. We have conversations, and they just want to get another point of view on something. They're making a career change. They're going to a different country or something, and they just want to talk it over. And we have some conversations like that. But one thing I've also seen over the years is in a group of 50 people who join the program in a given year, probably, and Heather, you probably have the statistic, but I would guess 20 to 30% will change their job within the program. And a number of those will get their new job from a classmate.
Yeah.
Because they come into the program and they see this person over here is doing this, and hey, that looks really interesting. And the person in this other role says, this is a really cool person. I'd like to have them on my team. And it happens.
Yeah, and we tell everyone it can be a very transformative experience. You don't know what may be out there in a field that is of interest. We don't see people making drastic career changes, but making them within those, as you said, you meet a classmate who thinks you'd be great for this role, or a good fit for something for a company. So we definitely see that happen, and we see often classmates coming together and working on a business plan. That's
Yes.
something that's really incredible as well.
That's a fair number of those have gone off too.
Yes. Yeah.
I think one way to think about the MBA for those who are considering it is, I learned this from a partner at McKinsey who once said at McKinsey, he said, we think of the T. Everyone's got an area of real depth where they know the technical details, they know what they're doing. And most people come into an executive MBA have really developed a particular capacity or competency or expertise. The MBA is like the top of the T. It teaches you the breadth of what goes on within a business organization or any organization. And so what you're bringing is your own competence and experience in a given kind of role. And what you're here to learn is that breadth across the entire span of business. And that experience of learning all the possibilities out there often gives people a sense of, oh, I could do this over there. That would be interesting. Or I could go to that firm and that would be different and interesting. But I could bring my capacity, my competence with me, offer them something, and I'd learn something entirely new. And I think you get a fair sense of that in the program. And
Yeah,
and in that
absolutely.
sense, it is, I think you used the right word, transformative.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question we've had come in, and I think we've touched on this in some capacity, talking about the advantages of the program and how we get students from all different backgrounds and industries. But someone asking specifically about a candidate from a non-for-profit space.
Right.
You know, what advantage would they have for doing an executive MBA program?
Well, not-for-profits also have to be run. and a lot of not-for-profits are not run very well. So, I think if you're coming out of the not-for-profit space, there are some real strengths that come with that. Being mission-driven, and most people in the not-for-profit world are committed to something they want to see happen, and they bring to it that intensity, that passion, and that drive. And I would see the MBA as sort of enlarging your tool set for the way in which you can make your vision real. That it gives you a sense of how you work within an organization, how you drive and lead an organization, or grow an organization to make that happen. And
Yeah.
I think not-for-profits, and I spend a lot of time with people from not-for-profits since I work within the Business and Society program. I think not-for-profits are extremely entrepreneurial. They have to be. Their capital structure and the revenue structure is usually donative. So they have to be very good at people skills and creating a sense of mission and generating support. Then they've got to execute on it because donors want to see execution. And this is all stuff that you would learn in the Exec MBA program. One word I'd add here is that I think our Exec MBA program and our MBA program generally, but the Exec MBA program particularly, is very non-ideological. We're teaching techniques, we're teaching perspectives. We're not teaching a political orientation. And business often gets associated with certain political orientations. I don't think that's what we're doing here. I think not-for-profits face a lot of the same challenges that for-profits do. And I think they need some of the same energy and decision-making skills.
Yeah, that's great. And that very much touched on, it's the thing about the executive MBA program, it's an MBA in general management. So as Professor Buchanan was saying, you really do get a breadth of learning. You get the foundations, and then you're able to dive deeper in that with the electives. So within so many of those spaces, you are the jack of all trades. And I feel like having the executive MBA in the toolkit really helps solidify being able to do so much and have such an impact there.
One thing I would add too, in terms of the not-for-profit thinking and society thinking, the professional responsibility course and other courses are offered through this department here. And this department, Business and Society, has in the last 10 years established the country's first Center for Business and Human Rights. It's led by Michael Posner, who's a human rights legend, to put it mildly. And it is essentially a not-for-profit operating within the business school with its own donor base to advance issues of business and human rights at the society level. They also offer courses within. In 2016, I was department chair when both of these happened, so it's just sort of top of mind. We brought in Tansy Whalen, who had been the CEO of the Rainforest Alliance for 15 years. And Tansy started our own Center for Sustainable Business. These are both websites you could visit, the Center for Business and Human Rights and the Center for Sustainable Business. And what you will see is within this one department, we're actually running two pretty powerful not-for-profits advancing, not-for-profit agendas. So there's a lot of sympathy and a lot of, I think, insight and experience around those issues here at the school. And NYU tends to have a reputation as, we're very strong on Wall Street, and we are. We're very strong in real estate, banking, insurance. We are in high tech. We are. But we're also quite strong in civil society and the not-for-profit world.
Yeah, that's great. And so, it's been a many years since many of our candidates have been in a classroom setting, learned how to study for tests again, do reading. So how would you recommend candidates prepare for the coursework and being back in school?
That's an excellent question. I think it's wonderful that they're put in study groups. And I think a collaborative approach is really important because within any group of 4 or 5 students, you will have a variety of competencies and skills. And that really diversifies the risk, if you will, and dials down the stress. Having people around you can ask questions of, I think, helps you to study, it helps you to learn, and makes it feel less, you know, less of an anxiety-provoking experience, especially if you're coming back to school after a long period of time. What you'll also find in the exec program is only one of you will be the oldest one there. Everyone else, there's others pretty much just like you, whether you're, 35 or 40 or even 45. And, people have been out for a decade or more. And everyone understands that. I mean, make no mistake, the program expects you to work. They expect you to work substantively and to work effectively. But you wouldn't be here if you couldn't do that. And we know that too.
Our students are very high achievers. I'm always impressed by how much they're able to take on and
They're,
do it successfully. It's incredible.
they're extremely high energy.
Yeah. So to wrap up with one last question, if you had to pick one word that described that just all encompassing word for the executive MBA program, what would it be?
One word. Um, okay. For me, that word would be community. Every business program is going to teach you the basic principles of business. Credits go on this side, debits go on that side. Net present value is net present value. But an MBA program and an exec MBA program is an experience that you go through as a human being. And I think what the Stern School has created in their program is a very strong sense of community among the students. And that's some of it's structural, but also, to give admissions credit, you admit the right people who can do this. And I think the faculty who teach it are all volunteers. Nobody has to teach the exec MBA program. It's an honor to teach the exec MBA program. People want to do it, and you're asked to do it. And so everybody wants to be there. Everyone's bringing their best self. And there's a very strong sense of communal purpose. So my one word would be community.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And we always tell, prospects, every program out there, it's the right program for a certain individual. It's all about finding the right fit, the right community for use. And excellent ways to do that, joining these types of events and getting to see our professors in action and be able to hear directly from them. We offer ways of connecting with current students. So getting a firsthand perspective from them. For those that have submitted pre-assessments, we offer class visits. So that's an excellent opportunity for you to sit in on a class, experience the teaching in real life and what it would be like to be a student in the class. So that's all fantastic ways to, again, get to experience it and be a part of the community and figure out the right fit for you. So
Can I add one thing here? If Heather, if I can add one thing.
Please.
If you get the opportunity, if you're able to visit a class, I think that's a good thing to do if you can. And I'll tell you one class visit story. I've had a couple people that have come in as prospects and visited my class, and then the next year you see them actually in the class. And I had
That's our hope.
one student came in as a prospect, and he was in a course I was teaching on corporate governance. And I was rhapsodizing about how well this one corporation, which I'm not going to name, is managed, is governed, and how principled it is, and what a good operation they are. 2 years later, he's taken that corporate governance course from me. And I gave through the same spiel. And he comes up to me at the end and he said, you were very hot in this company 2 years ago. And I said, yes. He said, I was a prospect. He said, I went home and bought some of the stock. He said, I'm up 40%. I was like, thank goodness. But so there's a sense of, you know, learn what you can about the program, get some sense of how it's done,
Yeah.
get a sense for who else is, you'll find the students who are already here are very friendly and want to help and learn something about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yes, we have lots of opportunities throughout the month for to experience the programs. There's a virtual student panel for the with the Executive MBA DC students next week. We have a networking reception for in New York. The following week, we have an introduction to our careers team in a few weeks. So feel free. Joining all of those events again are a great way to get to experience the community firsthand. So this has been fantastic. Thank you so much. We've gone even a few minutes over, so I
Yes,
really thank you
as you
for
do.
your time.
Sure.
We had so many questions that came in, so thank you to everyone that attended for your engagement. And we reserved the time specifically to hearing more about the learning experience and what it's teaching in the Executive MBA program. So if there were any questions specific to applications or financial aid or um, candidacy, I would encourage you to reach out to our team with any specific questions or any follow-up questions. We're more than happy to help. You can feel free to email our office or call. Um, Professor Buchanan, thank you so much for joining us. This has been invaluable experience. We can't thank you enough for your willingness to participate, and it's been so helpful for everyone involved to learn more about the learning experience and what it would be like to be a student in your class in the Executive MBA program. So thank you.
My pleasure. Enjoy talking to you and wish everyone the best with their decisions.
Great. Thank you everyone for joining. Feel free again to reach out to our team if we can be of any assistance. We're happy to help. And thank you. Take care and enjoy the rest of the week. Bye.
Bye-bye.